If something is genuinely true, why does it so often require defense, justification, or argument? This question appears simple, yet it exposes a deep contradiction in how modern societies relate to truth. In contemporary discourse, whether religious, political, or personal, truth is often treated as fragile. It must be protected, debated, reinforced, and sometimes imposed. Arguments are constructed as if truth might collapse without constant verbal support. But this raises a critical problem. Does continuous defense actually strengthen truth, or does it signal insecurity about it? In everyday reasoning, we often fail to distinguish between two very different meanings of truth. On one level, there is truth as correspondence, facts, propositions, claims that can be debated or disproven. On another level, there is truth as reality itself, what exists and functions regardless of belief, agreement, or recognition. The central claim explored in this lecture is precise. According to Ibn Arabi, truth does not require defense because it operates structurally, not retribution. What demands defense is not truth itself, but identity, attachment, and psychological investment built around partial understandings of it. Modern psychological life is marked by chronic defensiveness around beliefs. People do not merely hold ideas, they identify with them. Religious views, political positions, moral stances, and even personal opinions become extensions of the self. As a result, disagreement is no longer processed as an exchange of information, but as a personal threat in cognitive science. This is described as ego-protective cognition. Beliefs are integrated into self-concept, meaning that challenges to belief activate defensive responses. When cognitive dissonance arises, when new information conflicts with existing beliefs, psychological stress increases. The mind attempts to reduce this discomfort, not by refining understanding, but by rejecting, attacking, or dismissing opposing views. From a neuroscientific perspective, this reaction is not metaphorical. Studies show that threats to deeply held beliefs activate the amygdala, the same neural structure involved in physical threat detection, argument escalation, moral superiority, and emotional reactivity follow predictable patterns. This leads to a central question. If truth is stable and real, why does encountering disagreement feel destabilizing? Ibn Arabi addresses this problem by separating truth itself from the psychological structures that cling to it. Ibn Arabi is often misunderstood as a mystical poet or spiritual moralist. In reality, he was first and foremost a metaphysician concerned with how reality discloses itself to perception. His writings do not focus on emotional belief, but on ontological structure, what exists, how it exists, and how it becomes intelligible. At the center of his philosophy is the concept of al-haq, meaning truth. Importantly, al-haq is not an opinion, doctrine, or ideological position. It is reality itself, independent of human recognition. Truth, in this sense, is self-subsistent. It does not depend on agreement, validation, or enforcement. Ibn Arabi makes a rational distinction that modern discourse often ignores. Anything that requires defense is contingent, it depends on conditions, support, or validation. But absolute truth, by definition, cannot be contingent. If it were, it would not be absolute. Modern societies often confuse defending truth with defending identity. Structures built around beliefs. Ibn Arabi's framework exposes this confusion with philosophical precision. The first core principle in Ibn Arabi's thought is that truth operates through disclosure, not persuasion. Reality does not argue for its existence. It simply functions. No force is required for truth to be real. A simple example clarifies this. Gravity is not defended. It is encountered. One does not debate gravity into existence, nor does disbelief weaken it. Its reality is disclosed through interaction. In the same way, truth, at the level Ibn Arabi describes, reveals itself through structure and function, not argument from a cognitive perspective. This aligns with research on perceptual learning. Understanding stabilizes through repeated exposure and interaction, not through debate. Arguing does not refine perception. Experience does. This exposes a common misconception. Debate does not produce truth. It produces alignment or resistance. The more aggressively something is defended, the more it signals insecurity in the knower, not instability in the truth itself. Truth does not need convincing. It needs recognition. A crucial distinction must be made between truth and one's relationship to truth. What becomes defensive is not truth, but the self's attachment to a particular interpretation psychologically. This mirrors attachment theory. Secure attachments do not overreact to perceived threats. Insecure attachments do when applied to belief systems. Secure understanding remains stable under challenge, while insecure understanding reacts aggressively. Ibn Arabi argues that defense arises when the self identifies with partial understanding and mistakes it for total truth. The narrower the understanding, the stronger the attachment. This is why emotional intensity often correlates with limited perspective. Real-world observation confirms this. Experts rarely argue emotionally. Their confidence comes from depth, not certainty. Novices, on the other hand, often display disproportionate confidence and defensiveness. Cognitive psychology describes this as the Dunning-Kruger effect, where limited knowledge produces exaggerated self-assurance. Defense, then, protects self-image, not reality. Truth remains untouched. Modern thinking treats truth and falsehood as rivals in a zero-sum conflict. One must defeat the other. Ibn Arabi rejects this framing entirely. From his metaphysical perspective, falsehood has no independent existence. It is not an opposing force. It is misperception, just as darkness does not fight light but disappears in its presence. Falsehood dissolves when perception aligns with reality. Cognitive science offers a parallel through predictive processing models of the brain. The mind continuously generates predictions about reality. Errors are not defeated through force, but corrected when models update in response to evidence. The implication is significant. Truth does not require aggression. Exposure is sufficient. Silence or non-defense is not weakness. It reflects ontological stability. Truth does not compete because it does not need to. There is a paradox here. Excessive defense often makes truth appear negotiable. When truth is argued aggressively, it begins to resemble opinion rather than reality. Psychologically, argument triggers confirmation bias in the listener. Instead of openness, resistance increases. Communication research consistently shows that persuasion decreases when identity threat rises. The more forcefully something is defended, the less likely it is to be received. Ibn Arabi's subtle insight is that truth withdraws from coercive environments. This does not mean truth disappears. But that perception becomes distorted under pressure. It is important to clarify a misconception. Non-defense does not mean passivity or indifference. It means confidence in realities. Self-evidence, truth, does not announce itself loudly, because it does not need to. Translating this framework into practical terms requires cognitive awareness. The first step is observation. Notice when defensiveness arises. Ask what is being threatened, truth or identity attachment. Emotional regulation improves when belief is separated from self-worth. This reduces reactivity and increases cognitive flexibility from a neuroscientific perspective. This shift lowers limbic activation and enhances prefrontal regulation, improving clarity and judgment. Attention can then be redirected instead of convincing others. Refine perception. Respond with clarity rather than argument. This does not mean withholding insight, but offering it without coercion. In Ibn Arabi's framework, truth becomes something you inhabit, rather than something you enforce. Alignment replaces confrontation. Stability replaces noise. The central conclusion is simple, but demanding truth does not need defense because it is not threatened by disagreement. What collapses under questioning was never truth. It was interpretation. Ibn Arabi's lasting contribution lies in this distinction. Stability comes from alignment with reality, not victory in debate. Truth functions quietly, structurally, and noise belongs to insecurity. Certainty does not announce itself, it operates.